Despite thousands of thorough studies, there's no evidence that astrology contributes anything useful to an investigation beyond what is already known about the subject. As a result, modern philosophers reject astrology as a source of knowledge, but they accept it as the source of meaning which can provide support and sympathy, whether through the reading of astrology books or through consultation with an astrologer. So let's jump right into the video without further ado and talk about 11 problems with astrology. Number 1. Misconception regarding the definition of astrology. A survey of reputable astrology books that include a definition of astrology revealed that some define astrology as a science, a divination art, a philosophy, and a system of self-understanding. However, the majority of respondents defined it as the study of relationships between the stars as well as human affairs. The most common reference in non-astrology books was to alleged relationships. The discrepancy is in part, but not entirely, due to the various applications of astrology such as horary, psychological, mundane, medical, etc. Everybody has a different opinion towards the definition of astrology. There are several astrology books along with definitions that violate classification and also understanding. Moreover, it is implied that there is disagreement regarding the meaning that astrology should be able to provide, which would be violated by the disagreement about the basic hypothesis of astrology. Number 2. Disagreement over the fundamental hypothesis of astrology. The key hypothesis of astrology is that what happens above happens below, almost always qualified by the dictum that the stars dispose but do not compel, or that the stars merely signify, indicate, or represent. However, well-known astrologers disagree about what the superstition means. Some believe the link exists only in our deepest intuitions, or that it has no noticeable consequences, or that it has observable consequences that do not require intuition, or that it is the consequence of planetary spirits or non-spiritual chaos, or that it is the result of physical forces. Now, don't get me wrong here. While astrologers disagree on the precise meaning of the fundamental hypothesis, they do agree on its negative definition, which is the main philosophical issue with astrology as a source of meaning. Number 3. Negative perception towards astrology. Astrology is described as exactly not the outcome of any known means according to astrologers. That is, it has a negative definition. Astrological effects are those which there is no known causal justification, that is distinct from being causal, that is, known to be without cause. I do understand it might sound a bit confusing, but it is what it is. There are two primary issues with this. First, we now have a valid explanation for alleged astrological effects thanks to research, so the aforementioned negative definition doesn't pertain. Second, even though the negative perception is correct, that is, if we ignore the first issue, there may be undiscovered causal explanations for alleged astrological effects. As a result, astrology finds itself in the awkward spot of not being able to claim any impact as astrological. It also means that astrology has no characteristics that, if proven false, would refute it, because falsification would simply mean that the impact was not caused by genuine astrology. This, ironically, is in line with the belief that astrology does not have to be accurate. Number 4. Lack of precision. Many astrologers believe that astrology is a more accurate representation of reality than other models. For instance, some of them asserted that the true worth of astrology lies in its capacity to describe people and the world in which they live from a perspective quite unlike any other. If astrology is only partly true, the universe is different from how it appears to be. Similarly, some of them asserted that astrology will perish unless and until astrologers re-establish the concept of the universe as a conscious living entity. The concern with such claims is that they are vague. Astrologers rarely describe their model predictions or the evidence they accept as proof that it has failed, and they often remain silent even when confronted directly. But just as we can't tell if a glass is full or if it's empty, if no evidence can be presented to disprove astrologers' claims, whether material or spiritual. Of course, none of these issues would arise if astrology did not require accuracy. However, we try to avoid these issues by claiming that astrology is a miracle. Does this help in any way? No, it aggravates the situation even more. Number 5. Making the claim that astrology is a miracle. Assume we assert the existence of genuine astrological phenomena. In effect, we are claiming that astrology is a miracle. That is, we are claiming things that are not only unexplainable, but also contradict current understanding, such as levitation. When assessing a person's claim, you should consider whether it is more likely that this person will deceive or will be deceived, or that the event he describes will occur. In other words, which is more likely, astrological miracles or astrologers' knavery and fallibility? or, on the other hand, astrological invalidity or scientists' knavery and fallibility. Things like winning a lottery aren't considered miracles in this context because somebody has to win, so the existence of a winner isn't exactly a miracle. Number 6. The issue of prognostication. Certain types of prognostication are acceptable. For instance, anyone can predict when we will die, spend money, or speak words, or whether we will voluntarily choose to comply with our behaviors or not. Few aspects of the future are, in fact, observable. Only when prognostication goes well beyond knowable becomes problematic. Nobody can predict whether we will drown at sea, win the lottery, or have a happy marriage in a given month, because such events are dependent on too many or too uncertain variables to be predicted. Of course, predicting such events isn't a problem if no claim or precision is made, since success and failure are meaningless at that point. Number 7. Astrology is only occasionally effective. We must accept that astrological predictions occasionally fail, which is due to the unreliability of astrologers rather than astrology's deficiencies. However, given the dictum that those stars signify but do not compel, astrology's frequent failure is inescapable. As a result, heavy transits may not always imply trouble. The rising of Mars does not always imply Olympic medals or red hair, and what is meaningful to one astrologer may not be meaningful to another. However, this accomplishes nothing. If astrology did only work sometimes, we have no way to know whether a particular meaning provided by astrology will be beneficial until after the event. We won't know how reliable all these deliveries are until many events have occurred. Even then, there's no way to know whether a given meaning is due to astrology, psychic abilities, chance, or other factors. Astrology's very meaning is statistical, in other words. Number 8. Astrology's statistical considerations. Most astrologers, ironically, deny that statistical considerations are relevant to what they do, claiming that they can't apply to a single person or sample size of one. However, because a proclivity does not guarantee a specific outcome, their incline, not compel dictum requires statistical considerations. Rain forecasting does not guarantee that it will fall. Stars that signify, indicate, or represent the same thing. Because the incline, not compel proclamation does not assure that astrology would be a source of meaning, its meaning can only be determined through further investigation. As a result, astrology will never be a standalone source of meaning. The intelligent person will act in accordance with this. Number 9. Independent justifications for believing in astrology as a source of meaning. If each planet was recognized to emit powerful rays upon whom terrestrial life relied, or if governments had declared that our daily activities be determined by our moon sign, or if interconnectedness was known to be dominant, the wise person would require independent reasons for having to accept astrology as a source of reliable meaning. None of this holds in reality. Instead, the presence of extraterrestrial effects is commonly cited as an independent reason. However, having to accept astrology as an origin of legitimate meaning is a huge and improbable matter of faith from these influences. Number 10. Argument over astrology. The more common argument is just to give it a try and you'll find that astrology is meaningful as well. At first glance, this appears to be unassailable. After all, what could be more convincing than the personal experience? However, the argument over astrology, while convincing the astrologers, is not so convincing to anyone aware of the unreliability of that experience. It leads to the failure of astrology as presented by the astrologers, and the primary reason why astrology appears to be meaningful, just because it works even if the wrong sun sign or birth chart is used. That is, connections are perceived even when they do not correspond to the below, which is directly contradictory to the basic hypothesis, regardless of whether it is qualified by works only occasionally. In other words, we see the meaning in birth charts the same way we see faces in clouds. Such conclusions are supported by the hundreds of studies that have been conducted, all of which imply that the chart is simply a cloud in which astrologers see faces and also pronounce it miraculous. The practice of astrology thus begins to emerge as a time-honored cover for the operation of factors other than astrological ones. Nonetheless, it can be viewed as a helpful fiction whose value to the client is based on the astrologer's qualities as a wise as well as caring person. If astrology appears particularly meaningful, that's because it includes seeing faces in clouds of the planetary gods, which was invented by the ancient Greeks to reflect human conditions. Thus, the faces we see are our own. For example, Mars is warlike, Jupiter is beneficent, and Saturn is wise. This is what is believed. Number 11. that clash with scientific explanations. In 3 ways, findings in the fields of astronomy, biology, and psychology contradict astrological claims. Firstly, they appear to deny that astrology can work in the manner and to the extent stated by astrologers. Secondly, they offer competing theories, such as heredity, that cover the same field as astrology and are therefore more testable, have greater descriptive power, and are much more coherent with other fields of science. Thirdly, as previously stated, they suggest probable non-astrological explanations for assumed astrological effects. Factors like perceptual and inferential biases, sampling errors, and capitalization on charts are all plausible explanations. Of course, new scientific discoveries could change the picture. However, existing scientific discoveries are based on a much larger body of research than astrology, and also the evidence required to reverse such a massive volume of work has been extremely strong. This alone is a strong argument to be cautious of claims about astrology as a source of meaning. Which of these problems did you face the most in astrology? Let us know in the comment section below. Well, that's all for today's video. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. If you want to see more content like this one, consider turning the post notification on so that you get notified every time we upload a new video. Check out this video, the 12 zodiac houses, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care.